Hi guys, and welcome to Adobe Live, and today we're showcasing Adobe Fresco with the amazing talented illustrator Octavia Bromell and myself, Matthew Mifsud, a solutions consultant at Adobe. And I will be taking your questions, which you will be posting in the comment section as much and answering as much as we can. But also, we do have people backstage who will be replying to your comments and once again trying to answer as much as possible. What we'll be covering today is lovely Octavia will be doing an amazing piece of illustration using Adobe Fresco. And then as throughout, we kind of discuss the features of the product, what's so great about it. And that's it really from me. So, and about me. Octavia, so do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So as Matthew said, we're going to be working in Adobe Fresco, which is a new painting and drawing app coming from Adobe. I'm an illustrator based in Dorset in the UK. My full name's Octavia, but everyone calls me Tink. It's just a nickname I've had since I was a kid. And I'm going to be drawing a little illustration in Fresco. But to start with, I really wanted to jump in and show you one of the most exciting things about the new app, which is the live paintbrushes. This is the thing that I think a lot of people are the most excited for.
Definitely. We do have other types of brushes. We have the vector brushes and we also have raster brushes. But as Octavia said, this is kind of a very defining feature of Fresco. So without further ado.
So I'm going to start off with the watercolor brushes. I actually started as an illustrator with watercolor paints and gouache paint, water-based paint. And the recreation of the kind of bleed on the paper is really wonderful. And as you can see, the surface stays active even after you've finished drawing. Normally, like the moment you lift your pencil off the screen, it dries, but it stays active. So this is kind of really nice if I jump in with another colour.
Yeah, oh wow, look at that. Just look at that.
And you can see it kind of bleeds as if I had a wet piece of paper in front of me.
So it mixes well. So I guess then, because obviously in this case you chose colours which are very similar in tone, what happens, like, will it mix colours and actually say primary colours and produce a 30 colour? So yeah, you're going to choose red with the blue, for example.
If I went in with red, and also because obviously the Apple Pencil is touch sensitive, the lighter you press, the less paint.
Look at that flow.
Yeah, it's really
look
satisfying.
at that flow.
So then if I go back in with the blue, and you can see it
purple.
makes purple.
Well, if it doesn't know their primary colours,
nice
that's what
colour
happens.
theory there for you.
Absolutely.
So that's the basic principle of the watercolours. And the other medium currently available is the oil paints. And these are really, really fun. They're just really messy. Like if I zoom in,
nice.
you can see how gloopy it is.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the only word I can use to describe it.
Well, it's kind of like, because oil paints create very like relief. It's kind of that 3D effect that you get where it's not a flat medium basically.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about Fresco, is kind of recreating that real life effect. Oh my God, look at what she does done.
So the blending is amazing. And I've seen other people I know that have been using the app that are like traditional oil painters, and they can recreate like traditional oil portraits in the app. And also I have an Etsy shop and I print art prints, and I've got this canvas textured paper, and I've done a couple of illustrations that I've printed out on this canvas textured paper, and it looks 3D like until you're right up to it.
Well, I think that's kind of one of the most amazing things about the live brush, especially the oil, for example. Because when you paint with oils, especially when you have a paintbrush, you know, when you mix the colors, you blend the colors, you work the colors, actually, that's the expression, into each other, that brush becomes contaminated in some shape or form. So, you know, I think that's a really, it's a neat feature.
And actually, you can see at the moment that every time I put it down, it's picking up with red from the start. But if you turn off reload color, and then go back in and mix, and then it will it's like the colour that I just mixed, which is really, really cool.
So that is because that is actually how real life oil paint works, you know. So I think with this software, it's our drawing and painting software. We are really sticking to that, and we want to really push the idea, paint and draw like you would do in real life, but for the modern age, I guess.
Yeah, and Fresco kind of sits at the intersection between drawing in Illustrator and drawing in Photoshop. And the other really handy drawing tool is the vector brush. And if you look at the layers over here on the right hand side, these you can see I'm tapping it on and off over here. If I go in with the vector brush, it automatically adds a separate layer because obviously vector shapes are a completely different format to pixels.
And also, if you notice on the layers, there's little symbols next to them which tell you exactly what type of brush or what type of graphic there is on it. It's a raster or pixel.
And so with vectors, obviously, you can just zoom in and in forever, basically.
I think this is such an amazing thing, especially given that, you know, we have Photoshop, which does a little bit, which does raster brushes, which you're probably going to show in a minute.
Yeah.
You know, with a little bit of vector. You have Illustrator, which does vector with a little bit of raster. I think this is the first that we have an app that actually handles both really, really well.
Yeah.
And this is very exciting, especially when it comes to, you know, moving on your work to other apps, which we'll discuss further on, how important this comes in.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to jump into a different document. And if you have a look at the menu on the left here, you can see this thing, Cloud Documents. And that, in my humble opinion, is the superpower of Fresco, is that it's all synced to my Creative Cloud account. So I can make a PSD in Photoshop on my computer, and like 10 seconds later it appears on my iPad, which makes it really easy for editing.
And actually, we do have a question on that about devices. So will this... Pat has said, will this device will be available for the iPad or just laptops and PCs? Actually, this is meant for portable devices in terms of iPads. So we're going to start with iPads, all those that kind of handle the Apple Pencil, and in the future we'll be working towards Microsoft Surface as well.
Yeah, so at the moment it's just for the iPad Pro because a lot of the functionality is built with the Apple Pencil in mind because of how touch sensitive it is and the angle variation.
But having said that, the iPad Mini, the new one coming out, will be able to use it.
That's true.
So pretty much anything with the iPencil, basically.
So this is the basic workspace of Fresco, which to any of you that have drawn in Photoshop before, there'll be a lot of familiar elements. This is a little sketch that I did before that I thought I would do some illustrating on today while we kind of chat about the app. So you can see over here, there's like layer tools, and I'm just going to turn the opacity down of the whole sketch layer, just so I can start filling it in underneath, and I can see what I'm doing, basically.
On the subject of what you're drawing, basically,
yes.
Because I think it's very, very interesting. Like, I've known Octavia now for the last couple of months, and we've been worked together on other projects, and something that fascinated me was her story. So you recently came back to illustrations, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually started illustrating 3 years ago when I moved home from London to my childhood home in Dorset with anxiety and depression. I'd kind of been struggling with my mental health for over a decade by the point I actually came home, and it just basically got to the point where I couldn't look after myself anymore. So I moved back in with mum and dad, and basically had a complete break for at least a year. I kind of withdrew into myself, and it was only when I started recovering that I picked up drawing. One of the biggest symptoms of my depression was I couldn't get enjoyment out of anything. And I mean, I'd watch films that I'd seen 100 times before and they were my favourite films, and I would just get absolutely nothing out of it. So when I started drawing and found that I was enjoying it, it quickly became quite addictive. And it was incredibly therapeutic, definitely.
I mean, I do find drawing very therapeutic myself as well. Even just watching the live brushes, the water spreads is such a cool therapeutic thing to watch. So I guess that informs your theme in a way of what you usually draw?
Yeah, so my project for my year as an Adobe Creative Resident is called The Joyful Everyday, which is the concept that you can find happiness in the minutiae of everyday life. And this comes from my experience with mental health. I've just finished a 100-day drawing challenge where every day I picked something small that brought me joy and illustrated it and shared that with people. And that's kind of why I'm drawing this. This is things that make my dog happy.
Oh, I assume you're a dog person then.
Yes,
so
I have a Cocker Spaniel called Biggles.
Okay.
He sleeps on my bed and comes to my studio with me every day.
So just to jump back up, we'll go back to the subject of dogs because that's a really cool subject. But just to see what Octavia's been doing. So what type of brush are you using
so I'm now on the third type of brush, which is the pixel brushes. And again, for anyone that's drawn in Photoshop before, this is where you'd find all of your lovely Kyle Webster brushes. For those of you that don't know, the incredible wizard that is Kyle Webster.
There's about 1,800 brushes
yeah,
that he
well
has
over
created,
1,000 brushes.
Yeah.
And if I just tap into the brush panel, this is my favorites. So I've kind of gone through each section and picked the ones that I use the most. But if I was to click this plus at the bottom here, you could add more brushes. And actually, you can see this entire section at the bottom is library brushes. So these are everything that I have downloaded to my Creative Cloud account. So they kind of just appear automatically, which is really cool.
So we do have a question. Colin asks, is there a release date for Fresco? So Fresco will come later on this year. Max is just around the corner, so look around that time. So that's the best thing we can do in terms of answering that question, can't we?
Yeah, we're not entirely sure, but it'll definitely be this year.
As you can see, Fresco is really getting together in terms of what it can do and achieve, and can only get better basically by the time it's released.
Yeah. So I'm going in with some of these pixel brushes. As I said, I've got my favorites. I like to use paint and pencil textures. So I'm just kind of going in and filling in this little dog's face.
Who I assume has a spotted face.
Yes.
Fantastic. Cool.
He's very spotty.
One of the things I noticed, because you know when you're drawing, is it possible for you to kind of move stuff around in terms of the UX?
Yeah, definitely. So most of the selection tools that are available in Photoshop are also in Fresco.
Oh, I think I meant the dockings and stuff like that. The actual.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We will talk about selections in a minute, though.
Yeah.
In a minute,
so if I open up the color tab, you can kind of grab and drop them again, and then this in the top right-hand corner, these two arrows make the screen cleaner, which is really nice. So if, for example, you were drawing something and you knew that the only thing you were going to need would be the colours, you can just kind of pick different ones from there.
Fantastic.
And fill in different parts in different colours.
Is that at the moment the only undocking that you can do?
No, you can do the brush panel as well.
Oh, fantastic. That's good. That's good. Oh, and
yeah.
that as well. That's very handy. That's very handy.
Yeah.
When it comes to having all your brushes and colors, and you don't need to tap in and tap out every single time, really. Cool. So what brush are you using at the moment? I know it's pixel, but
so this is the Kyle Webster 2B pencil.
Oh, nice.
This is kind of my go-to. I use it like all day, every day. And I'm sure that a lot of you that are interested in Fresco because you want to use it, I'm a brush hoarder. I have like thousands of brushes from loads of different people saved to my account. But I only actually use about 7 or 8 of them most of the time. So I really like being able to save them to my favourites.
And there's a variety of brushes actually, like for example, for comic strip drawing, for example, there's like Band-Aid dots and things like that. They're really neatly separated into different groups, which just makes so much sense when you're kind of working professionally on this.
Kyle Webster has actually handpicked all the brushes that come automatically with Fresco, and they've kind of looked at the ones that are going to be the most useful for everyone. But then you obviously have the option to add more. So I am just going to add a few more details to the outline of the dog, and then I'm going to group the layers. Again, as an illustrator, my work can be quite chaotic sometimes. So if you drag one layer on top of another, it creates a layer group. And then you can obviously move the group
around.
As
Incredible.
a whole. It's tap with 2 fingers to undo, and 3 fingers redoes it.
Although, can you set that up to whatever you're liking, kind of these gestures and things like that?
Yeah, the gesture controls were all customizable.
Fantastic.
So
there's another interesting thing which actually you and I are covering. It's the little round dot circle.
I'm going to move that up so we can see it. So if I drag this circly blob thing, this is the touch shortcut, which effectively does a lot of the things that the Shift key or the Alt key would do if you're working on a keyboard. So if I just go in with some charcoal, and then if I hold it, or in fact if I double tap it, it stays on, you can rub out or erase with the brush that you were just drawing with, which is really, really helpful. And that does lots of different things depending on what you've got selected. So, for example, if I turn that on and then I select the move tool, it's not on. That's a good place to start, isn't it? There we go. That's not happy. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see that the screen it locks it in either the X or the Y axis, which can really help when you're trying to navigate like a really in-depth, complex piece.
That's nice.
So yeah, I think a lot of digital artists, I end up with a lot of layers, because if I'm doing client work or even just like a really big piece for myself, it's really nice to be able to go back in afterwards and change the colours, which is obviously the benefit of having layers in the first place.
Speaking of sizes, actually, we do have a question about size in terms of the canvas. At the moment, yes, you could do, when you load the app, there is a couple of presets, for example, size of the iPad screen, A4 paper at 300 dpi. So yes, you'll be able to scale this for both for print work and for digital work, because we want Fresco to give you that flexibility. Because ultimately, you will be able to finish off your piece in Photoshop, okay? We'll talk about exporting files later towards the end, because that's when it kind of makes sense to talk about them. I'm just looking at more questions. Yes. So have you done the grouping already of things?
I grouped the dog quickly, but once I've added the details on the hand, I'll be grouping that as well. So, actually, I'm drawing that on the same layer.
That always comes a problem, isn't it? So I guess that's something to watch out for if you're using because before you said a new layer automatically is created for you, but that only applies then if you're doing a completely different type of brush.
Yeah, because obviously you want to be able to have the control of creating your own layers.
Of course.
Because that's kind of the power of working digitally, is being able to separate them out.
I remember once I was drawing using Fresco and I ended up drawing on the same layer, and I realized that's not what I wanted, because then when it came to control it and transform it, merged everything together. So I had to restart that. So it's just a watch out that kind of things are created that way. Actually, speaking of transforming things, it does come with selection tools, which we touched briefly before.
Yeah.
I think maybe we're talking about now.
Yeah, so I'm just going to group the details of the hand, and then one of my favourite things about the selection tool is you can obviously you've got like a lasso, but they've kind of merged what was the polygon lasso and the kind of magic wand lasso. So you can see if you can get straight lines by tapping. So it's really helpful that you can lift your pen off the screen and draw more points. And also, obviously, you can undo it, so if you select the wrong thing. But the one that I use all the time, actually, is the brush selection.
Ooh.
So you can see, I'm just going to open up a panel. My brush is way too big, so I'm going to make that a bit smaller. But what this basically allows me to do is really mark out the section. And again, you can lift it off, you can undo steps.
It's incredible. I think this is it. Like the Apple Pencil has opened up so much potential for this app. I mean, if we look at Sketch, which we had previously, this kind of births itself out of this tool. But back in the time when we created Sketch, the iPad wasn't as advanced. We didn't have an Apple Pencil. But this Adobe Fresco has been designed with this kind of functionality in mind, which is why a lot of our features require the Apple Pencil. So can you draw with your finger, though? Because that would be an interesting question.
Yeah, you can. Obviously, you can draw with your finger, but because I generally use my hand for gestures and for turning on the touch shortcut up in the app settings, I have just turned off. So you can see here the top one. You can decide whether you want your fingers to work as an eraser or as a brush, or as I've got it, gestures only.
Because you don't want to be drawing and holding the iPad and all of a sudden you mark something, basically. No.
And you can see as I've marked out this selection, and then I'm going back in with my brush, and obviously it's only drawing within
It's kind of masking as well a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It effectively works as a mask.
Fantastic. Actually, on pixels, Sama, can you lock the pixels like in Photoshop?
Yeah, so if I just finish this off and
We'll
then
finish this off and we'll answer that in a minute.
deselect it.
Yeah.
And then if you go into like the layer settings on the far right hand side, these three little dots, and then you can see you've got lots of options. And again, this is kind of the buttons that would be like along the top of the layer group in Photoshop. So if I hit lock transparency, and then that basically means if I pick a darker color, it means you can only draw on the pixels that you've already created.
Does that work with live brushes as well?
That is a very good question. I don't actually know. Shall we find out?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
so then if you paint with another color, should...
Yeah, so
paints within that space.
Bleeds.
Yes,
there
great.
You go.
So mention that.
I'm learning something too.
Sorry, yes. So that's incredible. That's very useful, especially when you're trying to do watercolor and control. You will get that not spreading outside of the space that it should be spreading, basically. Just looking at more questions. So from watercolor perspective, is it possible to vary the paper surface so as to give it rough texture that brushed when it reacts to it? So basically it's about the surface medium. Yeah.
At the moment it's not. I know that is something that a lot of people are looking for, and I know they're looking into it, but at the moment, no, you can't vary the surface that you're drawing onto. In theory, you could do it if you just imported the texture yourself as a texture layer, but it's not built into the watercolor at the moment. Honestly, I think the big achievement is that...
The physics.
Yeah. yeah.
The physics, the water physics, yeah.
But with any app, obviously, even once it's been released, they're going to be carrying on developing it.
Yeah, this is version 1.0 when it is released. That's what it's going to be, you know. If you think about Photoshop, it has 30 years of experience on its shoulders. So I think it's kind of, it's incredible what our AI can achieve with this, which is Sensei, you know, works behind the scenes. All of this is basically powered by Sensei. Yeah. And in fact, one thing to mention on this media, actually, on the oil, you do have an option, because if you noticed when Octavia painted with the oil, there was a canvas texture behind it. You can actually switch that off, but you still get the brush stroke, that thickness of the brush stroke, but you won't get the canvas effect on it. I guess for oil it's very important because it's a very textured medium, isn't it? Yeah.
And also with the live brushes, you have the option to, if you have the touch shortcut on when you've got one of the live brushes selected, you can either add just water if you're working in the watercolor, or a dry brush. So if you just want to do blending and you don't want to pick up the color, then you can definitely do that with the live brushes.
So at the moment you're erasing.
Yeah, so I'm using the touch shortcut as a rubber or a eraser.
So does that pick up the brush as an eraser?
Yeah. So it's rubbing out with the brush that I used. Which basically, obviously you have the general eraser up here, but as you can see, that has a very harsh edge, and I like my illustrations to be a bit more organic.
You know, like real life.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to mask this layer now because I've drawn these socks that my dog loves to carry around the house until you never have a pair.
We will need to talk about the elements you're picking on your... because it's very fascinating for me. The socks is interesting, you know.
But I'm going to add some detail, so I'm actually going to mask it. So if I go mask layer contents, and you can see that this little tutorial has popped up, and it's red. And then this is kind of adding to, I can get rid of the mask basically, or add more to it. And then if I swipe to the right on the layer, it goes back to editing the actual layer.
It's kind of like Photoshop a little bit. In a way.
Funny you should say that.
Isn't it? A little bit like Photoshop, wouldn't you say? We do have a question from the Pip Fairy. Cool name, by the way. Love that. She says, so exciting. Can you alter vector lines like you can in Illustrator using the direct selection tool?
No, at the moment there isn't a direct selection tool, but I've been playing around with it a lot because I do a lot of typographical pieces. And what you can do is all the brush strokes. So if you draw a heart shape with a vector brush, and then you want to make it bigger, so you go around with a brush and just extend the shape, if you export that to Illustrator, it will remember all the separate brush strokes. So it works kind of like the blob brush tool in Illustrator. So you can't directly edit them in Fresco, but you can then directly edit the shapes.
By adding onto it with the same vector brush or a similar vector brush. Another thing you could do, once you finish your piece and you want to do changes to that vector shape, if you open it in Photoshop, it will give you a smart object, which then if you click on it, it will open in Illustrator, and there you will have points which you will be able to edit, basically. I think it's very important to kind of bear in mind that the role of Fresco is about painting and drawing and leaving it as organic as possible, you know. So that kind of free-flowing style, even though we will have control, you know. One of the latest releases actually is you can draw lines, I've been told.
Yes. So actually, if I get rid of that, there's this feature called zip line. So if I draw a line and then hold, I don't take my pencil off, and you can see it kind of locks. And this actually works with shapes as well as straight lines. So, for example, if I was to draw a square and then hold that, it like approximates the shape that you wanted to draw.
Fantastic,
basically.
That's really good. So your dog loves to eat socks.
He doesn't eat them, he just carries them round. He gets a bit excited every time you come home. And basically will bring you a present. And
oh my God, so my friends have 2 Dachshunds, right? And every time I visit them, the first thing they do, well, one of them does specifically, the other one jumps and pees all over me with excitement, whereas the other one just gets a shoe and gives it to me, which I find so strange and endearing at the same time, because they're the cutest things.
He's not happy unless he like has something that he can actually bring you. It's so cute.
That's so amazing. I do love dogs, you know. So you've drawn, so at the moment you've done the dog. What else? If we zoom out, just have a look at the image, how we're getting on with it. Yes, you've done the dog, the heart, and that's just you showing your love, I assume.
So these socks are still masked, and I'm just kind of going in with some rough lines.
So you get the masking feature that you get in Photoshop, which allows you to really control your drawing in a way as well.
You can go back into the mask by swiping into it, and then obviously you can edit it. So
fantastic. Similar to Photoshop, basically, yes. There is quite a lot of synergy between this app and Photoshop.
Yeah, it's meant very much to like work
with it
together.
They're not meant to. It's very interesting because obviously, okay, we have Photoshop. So why are you going to be using this app? You know. And Photoshop exists already. Isn't this redundant? Actually, the way we see it for us, unless you want to answer that question.
I mean, I think basically it's just so easy to draw on my iPad.
Yeah.
Like if I'm watching TV or I'm on the train, I travel quite a bit for work. So being able to like take my office with me is really helpful, which I think is the general appeal of the iPad. Kind of from like a basic standpoint.
But can you, I think what's also important to realize is that, as Octavia said, this is about creating art on the go, but also professionally. You know, you can spend hours working on this. It will see the great quality. I guess Photoshop really sits in the space of retouching and really hardcore comping and merging of photography images together, different assets, whereas this is really a painting and drawing app. So you wanted to create something here which is very specific in what it delivers, and it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a painting and drawing app. And obviously there is another version of Photoshop for the iPad, which is coming soon.
And we can't talk about it. That's all we're going to say about it. So do not ask us questions about that.
But that's going to cover like, this is for drawing. This is for the drawing
This
side.
is for drawing or painting. So this is kind of the app that we kind of want to focus on. We do have a couple of questions. Can you create separate layer masks like in Photoshop?
Yes, you can. So obviously you can go in and just mask what you've already drawn on a layer. So if I just go back to the arms of the chair, like I did before, so you can see it's just going to draw in the masks, in the arms, but then you can also just create... if I flatten that mask, you can create an empty mask as well, which is on the arm layer. And if you can see, I'm basically creating a mask. So then, like, you draw it, and that's picking up the brush that I'm using as well.
So you get the texture effect with it as well. That's great.
So then if I, so
lovely.
you can see
That's perfect.
it's masked out the texture.
Nice. we're going to do all of that now. And is there going to be a symmetry option? Do we know?
I have no idea.
It's a very good question.
I know that they're working on lots of like new things for it as well.
I mean, Max is still far away, so things will change, things will happen. But that's a really good question. So thanks, Tariq CGI. Sorry, I can't try to read for asking that question. So the sofa, what's the story? Armchair. What's the story behind the armchair?
That's one of the comfiest chairs in my house, and obviously the dog didn't start off being allowed on it, but that's now his chair and no one else can sit on it, basically.
So the dog owns the chair.
Oh yeah, he's a total diva.
Is he?
He does whatever he wants.
Oh, he should introduce him to me then.
He's 13. He's an old boy now.
Oh, he's an old boy now. Okay.
So all he really does is sleep. So I think it's right that he gets the comfy chair.
Oh, fair enough, Fair enough, to each their own. Although hopefully you're not meant to be sitting on the floor as he sits on the chair.
No. There are other places for us to sit.
So what are you drawing now for us?
This is a box of snacks.
Okay. Don't you find that this is one of the main reasons why dogs love us? Food, essentially.
I don't know.
I mean, come on, you have to.
I think that's a very cynical point of view of the world, Matthew.
True, maybe. Because I mean, dogs are amazing. I love dogs. That's why. I mean, I like cats, but cats are kind of more like, I will talk to you when I want to talk to you. Whereas dogs show the unconditional happy love.
Yeah.
Especially when you're going to give them a treat, though. I do find that, especially with my friends' dogs. I don't have a dog.
I'm actually going to look at a kitten tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, you're going to get 2 of them. Oh, it's so cute.
Yeah.
So there's so many amazing cat-dog stories online. You can get lost in that kind of stuff, So now we're doing more fills. So you've been only using one brush at the moment, right?
I've been using a combination.
Cool.
As I said, I've got a few of my favourites, which I've saved to the favourites panel. And this just makes it really easy because I basically know the kind of textures that I like and why I like them. So I have a couple of go-tos. I like the Badass brush and the Chunky Charcoal for doing like big textures, and the Kid Crayon as well is really fun. That's the one I'm using at the moment. And then there's a couple of like smaller pencil brushes that I like using for detail. I think it's just what I like, but I think it's also kind of evolved into like part of my style, I guess.
Well, I was going to ask you actually about that, because like trying to understand, like define, is there a way to define your style in a way? And because you said that you used to be an artist, like you not picked up a brush or a paint for a while.
Yeah, no, I have no training.
You have no training.
Art.
Wow, that's incredible. Guys, check this out.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
No, but it's an amazing thing, And I think that's a very good point, because if you think about drawing really as a skill, when we were children, that is something that we used to go to, and I still remember how much I used to enjoy myself just spending hours and hours drawing on end there. So there's something quite important about
definitely.
The process.
I think that I had a couple of not great art teachers at school. I did art for GCSE, but I didn't even cross my mind to do it past then. And honestly, I don't think I would have ever gotten into it if I didn't have the kind of low impact route into it. Because obviously when I started drawing, it never even occurred to me that anyone would ever see what I was doing. So it completely took that like, oh my God, everyone's going to judge me if I try hard and this fails,
So you were just doing it for yourself, basically.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the best thing, because especially as an artist, doing something for yourself without that kind of thought behind your head, it just allows you to be more freer with your creativity, because it's not subject to other people's judgment in a way, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, so there must be some sort of artist that inspires you, or you inspire yourself from that, or just in general, what inspires you?
I'm a self-proclaimed art nerd.
Okay.
I take a lot of inspiration from like fine artists like Matisse and Gauguin.
Oh, we can see a bit of that happening now that you've mentioned it. Yes.
But then also some really amazing illustrators like Bodil Jane is amazing. Nina Cosford, Leah Goran, mainly like strong women. I think female artists really inspire me. And also that's kind of where like my community started, was on Instagram. So I think because I started drawing to empower myself and then by extension other people.
Well, the impact, you have with that.
yeah. So it's really exciting for me to be able to kind of use my platform with Adobe to talk about my mental health and imposter syndrome and self-doubt
all of that.
generally.
I mean, it honestly
big
is something that
topic.
I myself have felt and suffered. You know, I think all of us in some shape or form have gone through something like that. I mean, I'm with you on this. I use my art as well as a way to deal with things, because it's very important. I think it's quite admirable that you talk about this so openly, you know, because it still is a subject matter that not everyone people feel comfortable talking about, you know, and it's amazing. Out of something like that, this is happening, you know. It's such an amazing story.
Yeah, it definitely. I feel like I've kind of been as low down as a human being can get, basically. So it's definitely really nice for me to be able to take something so positive and be able to make my career on it. And that's like why I wanted to apply for the residency, because I'd started picking up like client work, and I was working in illustration. As I said earlier, I have an Etsy shop as well, but it got to the point where I wasn't really fulfilling like my own creative brief. So I was trying to pay the rent.
As we all do.
Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it was really important to me to use my year as a resident to try and kind of build that part of my life into my career, essentially.
So for those who don't know, Octavia is our artist in resident. We have several different artists and creators from various disciplines, you know, from film to photography and things like that. She's this year, so basically we empower these creatives using our tools, kind of let them create things and just be and just have like Octavia's team, you know, what makes her happy, that sort of thing. So
it's a creative career Kickstarter basically, and Adobe funds a year's worth of work on your dream project. So I would highly recommend any of you emerging creatives out there to please go and check out, because the applications are going to open soon.
You heard that.
Yeah.
All aspiring artists, applications
Please apply.
Soon. Check that out. We have a couple of questions actually. So can you load the reference image?
Yes, you can. So on the toolbar on the left-hand side.
Am I covering it? No.
No.
Somewhere
I
around
don't
here.
know. It's like just above my head, actually.
Okay, yes, fantastic.
So you can see here, and then you've got the option to bring it in from your camera or from your camera roll. So you can like take a picture right now, or import a reference image online.
Or from the Creative Cloud. So if you have something saved on CC files,
absolutely.
you can load everything from there basically as well.
And
you can trace on it.
A lot of you will have the Creative Cloud app to kind of manage your assets, which it will pull directly from that if you've got that on your iPad as well.
Fantastic. It's a great app to kind of bring everything together and bring assets together.
Yeah.
Another question, can you control flow and opacity of the brushes in conjunction with the pen pressure? In conjunction with the pen pressure?
Yes, definitely. If I just make a new... like most of the brushes, if you're used to drawing on like a graphics tablet, the functionality is just built in automatically, so you can see if I draw really faintly compared to when I press really hard, and it's the same if I zoom in and turn up the volume a bit. You can see with my pen on the side, it's much
so it's
more
like
kind
a
of
pencil, you know, how you
yeah,
use a
so
pencil.
it really
Yes,
is.
fantastic.
And then if you're like really pressing on it, it's much bigger. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, all that functionality is built into
So
all the Carl Webster brushes, and
which kind of why it makes sense to kind of use an Apple Pencil to kind of draw with this rather than your finger, because you won't get this kind of sensitivity and precision as well, really.
And you can draw with your finger, and I think there's occasions when, well, for example, when my pencil runs out of battery and I'm really into
Does
your
that
drawing.
happen often?
Well, to be honest, I spend most of my day every day drawing, so more often than you'd think. I need to get a second one.
So, that's not a bad idea to get a second one. Like, although the new ones charge automatically with the iPad, which is very handy actually. It's a very handy feature. So, what's that?
This is going to be his collar and lead.
Okay, I'm assuming that is because he likes to take walks.
Oh, long walks, and the muddier the better.
Although you live outside of London, which I assume is much prettier when it comes to walks.
I live in Dorset in rural England.
Okay.
The biggest example I normally give to people is that there are no streetlights in my village. So if there's like no moon in the sky, you can turn the lights off at night, and sometimes you can open and close your eyes and not tell the difference. Which,
Oh wow, that is incredible.
like it's dark.
So basically, no one goes out in the evening. No, joking aside, but that means you can see the stars.
I mean, quite often, because there's a pub in my village.
Okay,
It's
cool.
one of the only things to
Oh,
do in my village.
Well, does it mean you can see the stars then?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's amazing. So that's one of the things I miss. Living in London, you just don't see stars ever.
Yeah, there's no light pollution. It's
That's
amazing.
incredible. That's incredible. So he likes long walks. Do you have to take him out every day then, basically, I assume?
Well, we don't anymore because he's too old.
Oh,
Bless him.
13 years,
yeah.
you said, right?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
very old.
But when he was a puppy, like at least once a day, quite often more than once a day, because he just had a completely endless supply of energy.
So actually, just one quick thing. Actually, whilst you're there, we have a question.
Yeah.
So you've covered, but might as well show again. Can you put layers into folders?
Yes, you can. So you can see down here I've made some, but actually it's a very good point to stop and tidy up my workspace.
I think so, because look how many layers. I mean, how many of you
know.
do this? I mean, when I use Photoshop or anything and just accumulate layers and just like, and then you have to hand this to someone else and like, yeah, I need to tidy this.
And then you can tap into it, obviously.
Yeah, fantastic. So look, so you get the little kind of three like lines, blue lines underneath that. So you don't get a folder icon like you do in Photoshop. You just get an indication.
You can just see that it's a stack.
Yeah, it's a stack essentially. That's a good way to
and then-
describe it. Yeah, and you can lock the layer, I assume, as well.
Yeah.
So all the Photoshop features will be
You can see
there.
the one right at the bottom is lock
Fantastic.
layer group as well. You can lock the group in its entirety, but also each layer on its own. And as I showed earlier, if I go to the move tool, because I've got this group selected,
that's quite
it's just
cool.
moving that one.
Fantastic. One interesting thing I noticed actually when you were working with the color bits
Yeah.
is that it saves the colors that you use.
Yes, it saves every colour that you work on in an illustration. I mean, I have other illustrations where I've literally used hundreds of colours in one document. And obviously you do have the eyedropper tool, so you can pick it up, but if you're using a texture, sometimes it can be slightly different, so it's a really easy way of
making sure that you're using the same color.
Yeah.
Yes. So the color and the lead. What else are we drawing next? We'll wait for it. Tennis balls.
Tennis balls are
We'll get to
next.
those.
Yeah.
We'll get to those
He's
in a minute.
a tennis ball fiend. He loves chasing anything, really, to be honest.
I do find some dogs though, you throw a ball at them, they just do nothing, they just sit there and just go, no.
Yeah, he's very keen. He's very keen for you to throw it, but
Yeah.
less keen to bring it back. But then he really wants you to throw it, so he'll kind of walk up to you with it in his mouth,
But not give it to you.
but not give it to you.
I do also feel like they kind of want you to do that, so you play tag with them a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of very, very fun with dogs all
Yeah.
the time. We do have a question. It's actually interesting. Can you export all the layers as images if you use this for onion skinning?
Yeah, you definitely can. You would need to go through and turn off the layers that you didn't want to export, obviously, like in Photoshop. And you can also copy layers and layer groups. So if you, for example, if I was doing a commission for someone and they were like, oh, we need you to draw a dog lead, then I could copy the group and it would retain all the properties and everything. But yeah, you can definitely export them on its own. We're going to go into all the exporting details.
I might do it now, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, I might as well.
Okay.
So whilst Octavia starts finishing off the piece,
Yeah.
there's a couple of... So what at the moment, Fresco, you can export as a PNG, a JPEG, a PDF as well. You can control the resolution of those as well, high quality, medium quality as well, a PSD. Okay, so that means that all the layers, all the grouping that Octavia has created in this document will be exactly the same in Photoshop. And as I said before, things like vector will be a smart object, so it's non-destructive. So you can do further refinements and editing in Photoshop, which is such a great feature.
Yeah.
By Max, that file format, the Fresco file format, will be immediately available to open in Photoshop as it is actually. So that will be a really good feature. And actually, speaking of Max, right? Are you going to Max, Octavia?
I am. It's
Are
funny
you?
you should ask.
It's funny you should ask, isn't it?
Yeah, if any of you are going to Max, I'm actually running a workshop on the Joyful Everyday. I'm going to be teaching you how to illustrate your beautiful everyday life. And yeah, it's on the website, so if you want to sign up, that would be great. I'd love to see any of you there, and please come and say hi if you do.
Definitely. I've done a couple of workshops with Octavia. It's always amazing to see her. Well, you're seeing her in action now, but also when she's teaching, it's such very empowering, as she said, and it's part of that story, isn't it, that we talked about before, about you kind of working with other creatives and showing them how that happiness can come through drawing, essentially.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just think it's really important to me.
Yes.
I've actually just thought of something else that I wanted to show off as well, because I know that time's not on our side. So if you click on the bottom panel of the one that...
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. If you just step to the side a little bit.
Okay. I get out of shot. There you go.
And this like little preview box at the top works as a preview, obviously. But what you can do is go in and change brush settings, and then you can draw in the preview box, so you can kind of see what your changes are going to do to the brush without drawing on the actual illustration, which I think is really fun.
It's a handy tool to keep your canvas neat.
Yeah,
basically,
definitely.
And faff around.
Yeah.
Basically. So that is that. I feel like a weather person here on green screen.
Yeah.
So we're doing the tennis balls. So he's a fiend for tennis balls, basically.
Yeah.
You know. And then there's finally, in terms of exporting, right? We'll show you in a minute. There's a really cool feature. Shall we say actually what it is now?
Yeah.
Because we're getting close to it, anyways. So what it is, it's time-lapse. So all the stuff Octavia has been doing on the canvas, it's automatically being recorded by Fresco. And you'll see when we get to the export part that it will do the entire time-lapse for it. So we'll be excited to see that.
It's really handy. I think Gary Vee said that you shouldn't be creating content for your social media, you should be documenting what you're already doing. And the time-lapse feature is definitely a really powerful way to share your process with people. I know that I always find it fascinating seeing what other people are doing.
I like the speed of it as well, and then sometimes the great thing is so quick actually, because obviously it's going to be doing the entire hour. Will it also show actually, interesting, so you've done the sketch before.
Yeah.
Will it start from that beginning? So does it pause, or does it only time lapse just this specific session that you just done?
No, it's the whole document.
Okay, so from the very, very start.
Yes, I think I
Fantastic.
did the sketch in this document. I think so. We'll have to
We'll
I
have to
guess
see.
we'll find out.
We'll have to see when we do the time lapse.
We can do it now. If you
Okay,
want.
cool.
So I'm just going up to this little share icon. And there's the quick export, and you can set this to your preferred document type.
JPEG,
because
PNG, things like that. Yeah.
PSD, like if you only ever export PSDs, you can just do that there. For me, it's set to JPEG because I quite often email sketches to be approved, and it's a small file size. But if you click into it, you can see there's the quick export as well, and then you can rename it, save it as PNG, JPEG, all of that stuff. And you can also publish it direct to Behance, like you can from Photoshop and Illustrator. And if I go to time-lapse export and press play.
There you go,
I
guys.
did do the sketch.
You did do the sketch here. It's brilliant. There you go, guys. Look. So this is really handy, I guess, for your social media accounts then, isn't it?
Definitely.
Just to show the process of what you go through in a way. It will also show all the other stuff that you've been working on it, and all the other examples that kind of we've gone through today.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can kind of see the socks.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love that. So so what file format do you get out of this?
MP4.
You get an MP4, fantastic.
So I normally take that into Rush.
Another Adobe product, no plugins. The app version.
I quite like to combine it with the finished illustration. Because I think people find it really satisfying.
Yeah, so you do time-lapse, time-lapse, crossfade, finished artwork.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool. So I think we're nearly finished. I think we still have a couple of minutes left, though, to finish it off, actually, before we export it.
Yeah, if you guys have any last-minute questions, please.
Is there a pen tool for Beziers? Not sure what that means. That
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. So free morpheme. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, expand on your
On your
ideas.
question. Do you usually add a background to your images, or are they all?
No, I quite like having it plain. If I'm
It's
doing
nice,
like a
it's nice.
scene of like a cafe or something,
Yeah.
then I will. But most of the time, I think I'm drawing like cute little things from my life.
Yeah.
So
So that is always kind of your inspiration, you know.
yeah, it's all coming back to the joyful every day.
In terms of, actually, we have a question about the generation of the Apple Pencil.
Yeah,
Which one will work?
both of them.
So
I'm using the first generation.
Okay.
But
The
obviously
new one works as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Tried and tested. Tried
Yes,
and
tried
test-
and
and
tested.
The new one doesn't need to be charged. Well, it still needs to, but not. You can just charge it onto your. It's
Yeah.
Bluetooth, which is great. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're finally finishing off the. Do you think you'll manage to finish it now?
No, I don't think so. I'm always over enthusiastic about how much I can achieve in a certain time.
Will you be able to finish it and
Yes,
post
I
it
will
online
definitely finish it.
Fantastic.
And you can find me on Instagram at Tink Outside The Box if you want to see that later on.
Great idea. And we've actually got a the free morpheme expanded Bezier curves that you would make with the pen tool in Photoshop.
Oh, right, I see. Okay. So with the selections, at the moment, you can do the like polygon lasso, for want of a better word, or like you can draw. Oh, I'm on the brush. That's helpful. Oh, or you can draw like a fluid shape like that. And then obviously there is the rectangular marquee tool, or the elliptical one as well. And if you hold down the touch shortcut, it constrains it to a circle or a or a square, basically.
Like a shift key.
Yeah. But so that's the selection tools at the moment. I think they went with the ones they felt would be the most useful. I personally haven't felt held back by, and as I said, I like using the brush one most of all, because quite often I kind of draw out to fill a space, so it's nice to be able to go and draw over it.
I'm just going to read you a nice comment someone posted. This hour has been great. I'm not an artist, but have watched it purposely on behalf of my daughter, and this, I have no doubt, will inspire her.
I'm so glad.
That's great. Thanks, guys. We're glad that you kind of picked up something interesting and useful of this, actually, and that we have hopefully answered most of your burning questions. The team behind the scenes will endeavor to answer most of them as best as they can, and the information we can disclose at this point in time. There's a subscription question. This will come part of your Creative Cloud license.
Yeah, and there's also going to be a freemium model of it, so certain functionalities will be available for free.
Exactly.
As well.
So it's a free app. That's a really good thing. So kind of like low-level entry, you know. And as we've seen, it's not a difficult app to wrap your head around. But then we have the premium version, which comes with your subscription. Okay. People are really thanking us for our help.
Thank you, guys.
Do you have any last final comments?
Well, no, just thank you for watching and listening. And yeah, please feel free to reach out if you have any more questions on Fresco or life.
Well, thank you, Octavia. You've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for talking us through what you're drawing, who you are, what inspires you, and Adobe Fresco, an exciting new paint and drawing app coming to the iPad for now, later on this year. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you.